Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Siphana and welcome to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. For those who are the first-time viewer of the program, let me just say that this program is an initiative where we try to bring speakers from nationally, internationally, from abroad, or those locally, who have a certain experience and exposure in dealing with international issue, global issue, regional issue, and even national issue. And we hope that through this spontaneous dialogue, we'll be able to draw, extract, instill some of the experience, their experience, and how other people could learn from some of the experience. And hopefully this experience could be translated into actual opportunity for the development of Cambodia. Today the topic is more on exploration of mining resources, and we have the pleasure to have with us today Mr. Richard Stanger, who is the CEO of Liberty Mining International, and he's at the same time the president of Cambodian Association of Mining and Exploration Company. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Siphana. Good evening, and I'm very delighted to be able to share this, some of our ideas together.
Well, Richard, I think, you know, I know nothing about mining, to be blunt with you. For me, and I think to a lot of our viewers, mining in their mind is about, you know, digging. You know, and you see a lot of dirt, you know, big bulldozer taking out, and we don't know what it is. All we know is that they're digging something. Perhaps you should demystify a bit, you know, what this industrial sector, this, you know, is that is so important for the development of so many advanced countries. And now Cambodia have the opportunity to develop the sector. Perhaps you should clarify a bit, demystify, and speak for the layman what it's all about.
Be happy to do so. It's interesting. I think Cambodia really does not have a mining sector. It's in its embryonic stages at the moment, and it's really we're in the exploration phase. You've got to look at mining as a process of birth through to basically, if you like, death. You know, we go out and we start exploring for minerals. We spend a lot of time, effort, money, resources in that process. If we are lucky enough, we find economic resources which are worth exploiting. Then the process goes from that point to developing feasibility studies, which are really expensive to do and take a long time, but you end up with something which is bankable, and you can borrow money or go to the markets and get financing for, and environmental impact studies, which take time, effort and a lot of money, and involve not only environmental impact but social aspects as well. So you see, it's not just digging. We don't just get out there and find something and start digging it. We have to go through a long process that can take more than 10 years.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah. So we get to that point, and then it's all about design of mine and environmentally, social responsibility in the surrounding areas. It's about making sure that we have all the proper contracts in place with governments. Then it's about mining, and then we process whatever minerals that we're looking at, and that may go on 10, 20 years. Then the resource is exhausted. Then we have to look at, okay, well, the mine's going to be closed. So we have to have a closure and a sustainability policy that takes it forward in the future, so that future generations are not impacted by what we've done in this sort of window of opportunity. I think this is one people don't really see how much is involved in this.
Yes, yes.
You know, at that point you're talking about revegetation, yes, rehabilitation, making sure all the infrastructure is removed, it's put back to the way it should be. So it's a long drawn out process.
It's long,
and expensive.
And expensive, yes. Well, you know, for many Cambodian, and for many of us, we don't know much about mining, and you explain a bit the long process of exploration and everything. But in Cambodia, what you know, Cambodia is a small country, right? I mean, geologically, what sort of mineral that Cambodia have, or we think we have?
It's interesting. We have a country here which has lacked modern exploration. There's a relatively low level of information available. Geological surveys pretty much date back to the French, and there's some other aspects available. International companies that are coming here now are looking at the potential based on the fact that little is known about it, and we're using modern information that we have, satellite imagery, we go on the ground, we look for things. So the potential is quite good. I think perhaps the most important minerals that will be exploited in this country are things like gold, copper, base metals such as lead, zinc and so forth. And then secondary, there's opportunities for bauxite, which is for aluminium, and iron ore, which is for steel. Not enormous quantities, but good sized quantities and resources for those particular products.
And they are mostly where, what province? Because Cambodia have, everybody know we have a Great Lake, but I don't think that's where the mineral are, but there are mountainous area on the border area. What province are mostly the potential?
The country is kind of divided into two, divided by the sedimentary lake system in the middle, and I think probably we'd find down underneath that volcanic rock suites, which are very ancient. So it's been basically a floodplain. So the country is relatively flat. So we have older volcanics on the east and the west side of the country at certain points, or southwest. And those are generally intruded by newer volcanics. So if you like, you can go to Ratnakiri and see the Yaklum, which is a crater lake, which is the remains of an old volcano. So we have these intrusive, and they are the things that are give I guess in a simple terms, the plumbing system for bringing the minerals through to closer to the surface by epithermal means.
So the potential is there. The resource underground is there. Exploration, sort of like survey, systemic, what do you call that, geological survey, systemic survey, that sort of thing, has been undertaken, and I think with the latest modern technology, you probably know more than in the 60 or 50 when there was an initial survey done by the French or government or something those days. So this is good. So the prospect is there, but in terms of developing the sector, so that the country can extract most economic benefit that can filter down to the Cambodian population. Let's face it, as a state, we're always looking for new source of growth. You mentioned that the sector is still very much at its infancy. The sector that that the Cambodian people know on a day in, day out, they probably know about government. We're in the government. We're in tourism. We're in construction. We start to diversify a bit more into large agricultural expansion. But definitely mining is a new sector. What do you see? And here I'm speaking to you more as the chairman of the Cambodian Association of Mining and Exploration Company, which is a grouping of many companies in the mining sector. What do you see the partnership with the government? And it's clear that His Excellency, like Prime Minister Hun Sen, has been very much pushing to look for new source of growth. And this sector is definitely a new source of growth, still unknown, still at infancy, but a lot of potential. How do you see this dialogue between your association and the government on finding new idea, new partnership moving forward?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's important that to attract foreign investment, we have adequate legal, fiscal and environmental frameworks to work within, and also follow up through regulation on in those areas. And I think CAMEC is actively wanting to encourage investment here by bringing other international companies to invest in the sector, and as such we are happy to be working with the government on in a couple of areas. One mainly under Deputy Prime Minister Ketchon as a sub-economic working group under the particularly in the tax area.
Yes.
And as it relates to the mining industry, and that's kind of in its infancy at the moment, but it's moving forward, and I think that's one very important thing, that you get a holistic tax system which not only takes into account taxes but non-tax revenues for the government, and that it's fully integrated, and the impact of each one of those is put together. So that's one area we're working on. I think moving forward we'd be happy to be involved in the environmental aspects as well, because I think most of us are environmentalists anyway. We don't want to, we're into preserving what's there.
Yes.
Moving forward, so that's another area. And the legal aspects, although they're quite simple, they're quite workable in this country, so we see that as being good. And then the other aspect is encouraging foreign investment. So for instance, recently I was in Indonesia at a conference and talked just about Cambodia, and as an opportune place for mining companies to come to.
As chairman of this association, and in dealing with His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister Ketchon in the context of this working group under the Government Private Sector Forum, which
Yes.
the Prime Minister chair every 6 months, you see some good progress in that. I can't help but to touch on the issue of legal, environment where, I'm a lawyer, so I always think that for foreign direct investor, they are looking for an equal playing field, they're looking at legal framework, they're looking at the security or tenure, because particularly in the extractive industry where, the rate return will have to take so long a time before they can make some money back. So security tenure is very important. You think that the legal framework that we have in place now, the mining law that we had, the environmental law and sub-decree in place, is adequate for you, for your sector to move ahead?
I think in terms of world standards, it's workable, and I think, as far as, for instance, you mentioned the legal aspects of it, we do have, each company is issued with a license, and then there's basically a contractual agreement with the royal government, which should be, and I understand, is recognised under international law. So
yes.
I think that's reasonably solid. I mean, if you compared it to other countries, often there's a lot more legislation surrounding the industry, but I'm not sure that is better or worse. I think if a contract's well written, it should set out all the aspects of what we need, and also the continuity of the license from exploration into exploitation.
Yeah, I see. Well, speaking of the environment, I cannot help but to say that, in the mind of a lot of people, sometimes they see, some bad example, some good example of, the post, exploitation. And I was in Malaysia, last month, and I took my kids to Sunway Lagoon, and I was told that this is an open mine pit.
Tin mine, yeah.
Yeah, tin mine, right? And then they now turn this whole thing, into sort of like a resort, waterfall and everything. So, and there, you have this big, hole there, where you have all this big hotel around, and you see, my God, look at there. But it's all entertainment and resort area. But this is some of the example that you probably was referring to, right? That how they can turn a post exploitation to something of economic value. But that's the extreme case, because Sunway Lagoon is in the heart of a big urban area. But in the case of Cambodia, where it's a little bit more far away in Ratnakiri, Mondulkiri, Preva here, I can think more the similarity with Laos. And you have operation in Laos, your company?
We have done a significant amount of research in Laos,
And then Laos is much more ahead of us in terms of developing the mining industry. You know of some experience of example there?
Yeah, there's Siphana and there's the Pooh Bear operations, which are gold copper operations in Laos, both run by international companies and started and developed by international companies. And I would have to say that, you know, larger part of Laos' gross domestic product is generated by those two operations. If you look at them as an example, on a world-class example, they're both very high. They've taken into account the social implications, you know, in the immediately surrounding areas. There's a lot of money being put back into the local areas, employing a lot of people, education, developing sustainable industries, which will go way past the end of the mine life. So I think they're both great examples and should be looked at from that point of view when we start developing things here in this country.
You mean corporate social responsibility?
Corporate social responsibility is very good, actually.
Yeah. So for mining company, by default, they are multinational or transnational because it's a huge operation, right? And most of the time they are listed. So the opportunity to have this company engaging into corporate social responsibility is very important for Cambodia, particularly in remote area where access is not there yet. And so you see this sort of social development taking place, you know, in the margin of mining operation is possible.
Oh, yeah, I think so. And I think we start the process in the exploration phase. So I think you'll find any international company will, by consulting with local people, the local governments, and working with them, trying to employ as many people as we can from those local communities so that the money stays there. And educating them to understand what we're all about. That when we're, for instance, taking soil samples, we're not walking away with gold. We're taking soil samples to understand to understand what's below. So as we go forward and develop, we work as a partnership, and I think that's the way it's got to work. From that point of view, it's important to note that I spend a fair bit of time in the provinces myself, and I do see an enormous amount of environmental degradation in the jungles from illegal logging and so forth already, and so that needs to be taken into account. I think mining companies are often targeted as being having the most high impact. That's because we certainly do stand out. We can't hide in the forests too easily. So we have to be careful how we do things in any case. So yes, I think it's just one of those very important aspects of our industry.
Yeah, you mentioned education, which is something dear to my heart. I think for Cambodia to take advantage of this growth of this new economic sector, we have to be able to bring a new generation, to educate them so that they can be part of the development process. So, but to understand the sector require exposure, and exposure can only come with being involved with the company. You see the need to train, to educate this new generation so that they understand the specificity of the sector, and perhaps also in the form of university, where at the technology university they could start having curriculum more on that sector, so that students can major in that, so that when they graduate, at least they should have a decent knowledge of the sector and increase their chance of being hired by the various mining company. What's your view on that?
Well, I think education obviously is the future of the country, like yourself, and I think that the University of Technology did have a geological sciences curriculum, which was closed back in the 80s. We are working a bit with the UNDP, who have an initiative to work with that college to assist them in any way that they can to reopen that faculty. And then there's at another level, the vocational level, so more the technician type level. I think there's great opportunity there as well, and we can help by bringing, we have ready-made courses in Australia, for instance, that could be superimposed here and just used. So these are sort of aspects that we're looking at the moment, and trying to encourage and help in any way that we can.
Yes.
And I think, it's a great industry to be in, because young people, if they're not employed in Cambodia, they can, it's a global industry, it can go anywhere. If you're a geologist, you're always in demand somewhere in the world.
Well, now we have to look more into the future. The future, as you know, the royal government of Cambodia, and particularly something like Prime Minister Hun Sen, has been quite forceful in pushing for the establishment of a stock exchange in next year, and particularly hands-on is Excellency Deputy Prime Minister Kitron, who's chairing this aspect. Mining company are definitely company who could be targeted to list in the stock exchange. What's your prospect on that?
Well, I think that would be a great thing. The development of the stock exchange here initially is, in my way, it's not geared for high risk investment. So I'd imagine that in the future, when mining, or some of the mining companies that are already listed on other exchanges may want a dual list on Cambodian exchange, which would be great for Cambodia, because it's just another, it's a profile building thing for the country as well. And I think from the junior to middle-sized exploration companies where high-risk funds are required, most of that money comes out of either Australia or Canada or London. And there may be an opportunity to broaden the scope of the exchange to take into account those, the more high-risk end of the industry as well in the future. So step by step, yeah.
I think for listening to what you said, I'm quite optimistic about the prospect of this sector taking off. How soon do you think Cambodia will start seeing, the first benefit revenue from this sector? Of course, you mentioned that there are so many different phases. You have exploratory phase, you have development phase, you have extraction phase, closure, sustainability. I would want to touch later on the issue of sustainability, right? But first let's stick with, when do you think Cambodia should see a first dollar, coming from the sector?
Well, look, I'd actually have to say that I think gold will be the first real dollar that comes back to Cambodia, and probably in Mondulkiri. Yes. And within 5 years. There's some other interesting projects around being developed. I know there's a copper project which may be happening in the near future as well. So I think not too far distant.
Good. By the way, what do they make copper for? What do they use copper for?
It's used in wire, pipe, copper piping, which is not so prevalent anymore, but it's just about used in making radiators for cars, for cooling systems. For it's an industrial metal which is in this smelters in. I've been visited in China for making copper plate, who just cannot get enough raw material feed.
I see.
So it's really in demand. And like if you just look at where we've gone from the Industrial Revolution, with about 1 billion people in the world, to we're heading towards 8 billion now, from 6 a few years ago. It just, the sheer weight of population and demand for industrial metals is really putting pressure on such metals as copper. And the prices have been reflecting that.
You mentioned in Industrial Revolution, and I can say that Cambodia, we have this resource. do you see the possibility that someday Cambodia can develop itself its own sort of like processing facility so that we can retain the value, you know, of this resource here? Say, for example, a transformation industry. You know, are some of this mineral viable for to turn into a
Oh, for sure. I think gold is simple. You actually have
gold is
gold.
easy.
Once you have to process gold, and then you take it out in gold bars.
Yes.
So that's processed. That's everyone does that. If you look at something like copper, you can process it to different levels. For instance, a concentrate, which there's exported and then smelted, or you can further smelt it and develop it into copper, into cathodes in the country. And I think that's probably the kind of, it depends really on the level, the size of the deposits and so forth. But one must always take into account that around the world there are a lot of big processing facilities really hungry for raw material feed.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not really economic, but I mean the best thing for a country is to develop to downstream process their minerals as far as possible, because it adds value, and you know, I mean, it's just economically more sense for the country to do so. So yeah, I can see that with copper. Perhaps if the bauxite industry is developed, we can see some beneficiation. I think maybe that needs to be, anyway, we'll see where that goes in the future. I think so.
Yeah, great. We're almost running out of time, but I definitely want to touch on the issue of sustainability. You know, how do you see this sector in the future developing into a sustainable industry that will, you know, I like to think that, you know, yes, we explore today, but we have to think of the benefit, you know, of the next generation. And if we are able to have a good, sustainable, strategical approach in developing this mining industry, which can be environmentally quite disastrous if not taken care of well. What is your view? What is your suggestion on how we can look at this sector in a very sustainable way?
Well, I think it's got to start at the early stages. And because, you know, as you say, I mean, Cambodia really, its GDP is made up of agriculture, manufacturing and services industry, and so this would add a whole new dimension to the economy. But if we look at it from start-up, where we are now, taking an exploration project into production, and remember, we might start off with a large area and we only end up exploiting a very small area of that. Proper environmental impact assessments are carried out to world standards, and these are approved by the Department of Environment. The feasibility studies of world standard, everything, if it's done properly at the start, and the ethics of the businesses that are working in the industry are correct, then that process is a continuous process right through to the end. It doesn't stop just at, you know, if I would stamp it, okay, off you go and start digging. It's we've got to go back and follow up and regulate, make sure that procedures are being kept. I mean, that's one of the things that came out of the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico recently was that the government hadn't actually, you know, had let some things slip as well. So it was really a joint issue, and I think it's not it's like being a policeman. It's more like working in partnership with industry to make sure that it's everything's carried out properly and done in the correct way.
Wow, so it's quite exciting, and I'm glad you say that this sector, this mining sector, will bring a new dimension into the traditional economic sector that Cambodia used to have, which is garment service, small industry, you know, and construction. So mining is a new way to go. And unfortunately, Richard, we're coming to the end of our show, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity to exchange on this new exciting sector. And I look forward to see you again when you know, with you start to have some, you know, real development on the ground, and we'll invite you, and maybe we'll go to the field to see that. So, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of our program, and once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Good night.